Hi, it's Doug. In the last few mysteries, you've been learning about the different properties that materials have. But who comes up with materials? How do new materials get invented? Well, to give you a sense of this, let me tell you a true story about one material invention. This is a story about a scientist who worked at one of the greatest material invention laboratories in the world. It's a company called 3M. The scientists who work here have invented a lot of materials you know, some of which might even be sitting there in the room with you, like this one, Scotch tape. One of the 3M company's specialties, one of the things that they're best at, is making what we call adhesives or sticky materials. It was in the 1960s that a scientist named Dr. Spencer Silver was attempting to make a stronger, super sticky kind of glue. But as he worked on this, he failed, and the glue he made was instead only sort of sticky. Now, for most people, it would have been tempting to throw your failed experiment into the garbage can and just call it a mistake. But that's not what this scientist did. Instead, Dr. Silver didn't give up on it right away. He played around with it a bit, and he noticed something interesting. Even though it would just kind of stick to one thing and not stick strongly, when he peeled it off, it was still kind of sticky. It kept its stickiness, even if it wasn't super strong. He found this unusual and interesting, so he showed it to other people in his laboratory. No one really knew what to do with it, and most people in the lab didn't care to think about it much more. Yet Dr. Silver felt sure there was some kind of problem that this sort of sticky glue could solve, even if no one could think of any ideas. Luckily, one day he found at least one scientist in the lab who agreed that he was onto something, and it was this guy. His name was Art Fry. "Let me borrow some of that stuff," he said. "I'll see if it gives me any ideas." Now, one thing you need to know about Art is that he had a hobby on the side. He loved to sing in a choir on the weekends. He and the choir would have songbooks in front of them to help them remember the words to sing, and they'd quickly switch between songs. So Art would use little pieces of paper as bookmarks to mark each song. But see, the bookmarks were always falling out. That's when Art had that classic moment for any great inventor. "Aha," he said. In that moment of inspiration, he realized that by putting some of the kind of sticky glue on the back of the paper, he could stick the bookmarks onto the page without permanently gluing them down. And since this kind of sticky glue would stay sticky over and over, he could just keep taking these bookmarks off and reapplying them as much as he wanted. Can you guess what this invention became? When Art took the idea back to the lab at 3M, they decided to try it out on some paper. But of all the different color papers they usually had available, that day there was only yellow paper left. And so these became the famous little yellow pads of paper with kind of sticky glue on the back. They called them Post-it notes. Post-it notes went on to become one of the most popular items in any office or school. Today, they sell them in lots of different colors. So that's the story of one famous material and how it got invented.
Imagine if you were a scientist who got to make new materials. What would you try to invent?